Kyle Larson gives his first TV interview since his NASCAR suspension, and according to reports, he has also applied for formal reinstatement into the sport. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric and welcome to Out of the Groove. The Kyle Larson story continues to unfold before our very eyes. Earlier this morning, he gave his first national TV interview in months. We'll talk about some of the things he said on CBS this morning. We're also going to talk about NASCAR TV ratings because Adam Stern put out a tweet from Sports Media Watch that shows how every major sports television ratings have been affected this year compared to last year because of the COVID pandemic. And NASCAR's numbers actually stack up extremely well. We'll talk about that in a minute. I also want to briefly mention that I saw right before I record, James Buescher, the 2012 Truck Series champion who's been out of NASCAR for a few years now, he's coming back to race Texas in a couple weeks in a truck for Nice Motorsports. So James Buescher is back. Didn't see that coming. 2020 is full of surprises. All right, but I do want to start this episode by talking about Kyle Larson. A couple different Kyle Larson related stories in the news here today. I do want to start with the interview he gave to James Brown from CBS this morning. Like I said, this is his first national TV interview since April, since the incident that got him fired from Chip Ganassi Racing, caused him to lose all of his major sponsors, and caused him to be suspended indefinitely by NASCAR. This comes about a week and a half after Kyle Larson published that lengthy essay onto his Kyle Larson Racing website. We talked about that in an episode last week. And in that essay, Larson basically makes his pitch, in my opinion at least, to NASCAR, to NASCAR sponsors, potentially to fans of the sport. In that essay, he really expressed significant remorse for the mistake he made. He highlighted many of the action items, the things he has done about it. He wrote in depth how he's been humbled by this experience in a major way, how he's feels he's learned a lot since the incident. Anyway, it was a very powerful essay that we talked about in an episode last week, so check that out if you missed it. But he went on TV this morning to basically, I would say, reiterate many of the things, or at least some of the things that he discussed in that essay. But he did this with CBS, major network, a major morning show. Let's talk about some of the things he said in that interview.
I know deep down I'm not a racist. I said a racist word. I didn't think of how it took African Americans and probably in their thoughts, took them back to slavery and things like that, and injustice and stuff that they have had to work so hard to overcome. They might not believe it or think I'm just checking the box. I feel like I've definitely grown more in these last 6 months than I have in the 28 years I've been alive.
So I do want to start off by saying I have tremendous respect for Kyle Larson going in front of TV cameras, again, on a major show like that, a very highly viewed show like that, and addressing this head on. It takes a lot of guts to do that, it really does, especially when Larson's basically cut himself off from all media over the last several months. He's deleted all his social media. Like I said, he hasn't done any TV appearances. He's kind of been cut off from a lot of this stuff. So for him to get in front of the camera like that and do that interview, I have tremendous respect. I also have to mention that I did obviously edit some of those clips. I didn't show every single clip. I cut it here and there just to hit the highlights, of course. But even in that short clip that was on CBS this morning, it was pretty highly edited, and I didn't really feel like they gave really Kyle Larson the chance to go in depth or talk at any serious length about any of those questions, any of those topics. It was a very abbreviated segment was the impression. So even though while I edited it a little bit right there, it was even more, it was just as edited, I think, in the final product that was on CBS. So I did think that was interesting. I wonder if there's like going to be a full interview posted anywhere. I don't know how they work on that show. Maybe there is or will be, but I would be curious in seeing a little bit more of a long form interview rather than something that's so chopped up like that was. But anyway, you heard some of Kyle Larson's answers, and a lot of it echoes things he said in that essay. I thought one of the most broadest idea quotes in there was when he says that he feels he's learned more in 6 months than he had in his other 28 years of living. I think he's probably not entirely wrong about that, especially when it comes to this topic specifically. I think he's absolutely correct. I also thought it was interesting that they included a couple clips from the founders of the Urban Youth Racing School in Philadelphia. We've talked about that a couple times in recent episodes because Kyle Larson has continued his work with that program. He's been a part of that program or working with them for several years now, so it's not something he just started doing this year. But hearing them talk a little bit about how obviously they were disappointed with Larson at first, but how they still respect him and are still kind of vouching for him in a lot of ways, I thought that was interesting as well. Overall, again, like I said, it was a very abbreviated TV segment. I mean, I gained respect for Larson, like I said, for getting in front of the camera, putting his face and name and voice to all these words, to everything that's happened. But I don't think we really learned anything new from that appearance that we didn't already know from his essay last week or from other things reports have suggested or things he said in other interviews, not TV interviews, in the last several months. But still, going to be interesting to see how long it takes for Kyle Larson to get back in the NASCAR Cup Series. And that's what leads us into the second bit of news for the day. Kyle Kyle Larson has in fact applied for reinstatement. Finally, this has been an ongoing question for many, many months now, but finally, per multiple reports, Larson has formally submitted an application to be reinstated by NASCAR. NASCAR has not yet approved Larson's application, but they are reviewing it, and they are reportedly still in ongoing discussions with Kyle Larson himself. So my question about how long it might take for Larson to get into NASCAR, I don't think it's a matter of if he gets back in NASCAR, I think it's a matter of when, and I don't think it's a matter of will he race in 2021. I think he will race in 2021. The bigger question is when will the official announcement come, because rumors I should say, it's not really reports at this point, but rumors continue to swirl that Larson is the leading candidate to land the fourth and final Hendrick Motorsports ride, whether it's the 88 car or the 5 car, the 25 car, the something else, remains to be seen, but Larson is still the leading candidate at Hendrick. I think when they moved Alex Bowman over to the 48 with that Ally sponsorship, that freed up a fourth spot for Larson to be sponsored by many of Rick Hendrick's, Chevy dealership kind of connections. So you're not going to be relying on a big brand like Ally to take a chance on Larson. No, it's going to be Rick Hendrick pulling some strings to get Larson at least some funding for that fourth car, but it does sound very likely that Kyle Larson will drive for Hendrick next year. Rick Hendrick said like a month ago that he already kind of knew who was going to replace Jimmy Johnson. They were just waiting for the right time to announce it. I feel like ever since that quote, it's been pretty clear that Larson's the leading candidate for that ride. So again, it's not a matter of if Larson gets reinstated, it's when they officially make the announcement. I do think NASCAR and Hendrick Motorsports are waiting for the perfect time to release this news, because the moment this news breaks, it's going to be a story. I don't think it's going to be a huge story. It's not going to be as huge as the original story, NASCAR driver uses racial slur. That hit front pages everywhere, unfortunately. But it will still be a story, and while I think there will be plenty of support for Kyle Larson whenever he gets the nod to come back into the Cup Series, there will be some people who are vocally against it and opposed to it. And I think NASCAR is waiting for the exact right time to make that announcement so it doesn't distract from all the other things going around NASCAR. I mean, we're deep into the NASCAR playoffs. We're just 4 weeks away from the champion being crowned. The last thing NASCAR wants to drop on everyone right now is a big distraction, like Kyle Larson coming back and racing potentially for Hendrick next year, one of the biggest and most popular organizations in the sport. That's going to be substantial news when it eventually drops. And I think NASCAR and Hendrick are just waiting for the right time to do it. I mean, even Hendrick themselves, they still got 2 guys in the playoffs. Elliott and Bowman are still in the round of 8 trying to run for a championship. You'd hate to add any sort of distraction to their championship quest. So I do believe Kyle Larson will be reinstated before the start of 2021, and I think right now he is most likely going to end up in a Chevrolet for Hendrick Motorsports. That's where all signs seem to be pointing. I'm not going to say it's a done deal just yet, because I mean, from what people were saying, Austin Cindric to the 21 car for next year was almost a done deal until the Wood brothers and Team Penske flip-flopped at the last second and decided to keep Matt DiBenedetto in that ride. So things can change very quickly. Recently, yesterday, Adam Stern reported that Eric Jones is now the leading candidate at Richard Petty Motorsports. Really hadn't heard about that being a discussion until just this week, so that's kind of coming out of nowhere as well. We'll monitor that situation. That would be something else. I'm not to change the subject, but my point is things can definitely change, but as of now, I would not be surprised if Kyle Larson ends up in Hendrick Motorsports, so everyone brace yourselves for it, because I have a feeling that announcement will be coming probably at the end of November, if I had to guess. We will wait and see. Like I said, kudos to Kyle Larson, at the very least, for getting in front of the camera and addressing this controversy head on. It took him many months, but I think the way Kyle Larson has handled this is about as well as you can. Sure, the mistake was egregious, the mistake was dumb and bad, but I think the way he's handled himself since then, at least, has been about as good as you can ask for personally. But there you have it. This might be the last we talk about Kyle Larson for a while until he eventually likely gets reinstated to NASCAR. So that's all to really catch up on as far as Kyle Larson is concerned. Let's talk about TV ratings, something that I haven't really talked about in really much at all the last few months. When NASCAR first came back after the hiatus back in May, their first race back at Darlington saw a huge jump in ratings. No surprise, it was really billed as like the first major sport back in action. But since then, the ratings have really been all over the place, and I'd say the last few weeks ratings consistently have been a little bit down compared to last year. But with the way scheduling has gone this year, I mean, for a few weeks there, I mean, the NBA playoffs, MLB playoffs, NFL opening day, NHL playoffs, and NASCAR, as well as golf and everything else, we're all running at the exact same time. That's unprecedented competition for all major sports. So it's really hard to take NASCAR's TV ratings, especially the second half of this season, with any sort of seriousness. I'm just kind of ignoring them because I don't think they really are indicative of the health of the sport right now because of just how crazy and unusual this year has been. But that being said, Adam Stern, like I said, from Sports Business Journal, tweeted a report from Sports Media Watch. Specifically, he tweeted this chart, and it shows sports viewership trend. These numbers and percents here, you see like -61%, -56%. Those are how their 2020 TV ratings compared to the 2019 TV ratings for the same event. So for example, at the top of this list, the NHL Stanley Cup Final this year got 61% fewer viewers than the Stanley Cup Finals in 2019. And you can see the Preakness Stakes, horse racing, of course, US Open Golf, the NBA Finals with a substantial decrease this year over last year. You can see that the vast majority of major sports have seen declining TV ratings this year, and in many cases, substantial declines in TV ratings. I mean, 30, 40, 50, 60% less viewers this year than last year. That's an insane drop. But you'll notice there towards the bottom of this list, one of the few times we're being at the bottom of the list actually is a good thing, NASCAR's viewership in 2020 compared to 2019 has only seen a 1% decrease. So more or less it's broken even this year compared to last year, which in a normal season wouldn't really be anything to celebrate. And even now, I don't think it's really anything to celebrate because NASCAR's TV ratings even before this year were not fantastic. So breaking even isn't a huge thing to celebrate. But when you look at how much all those other sports have dropped off, I think the fact that NASCAR is more or less broken even to this point is something noteworthy. It's making the best of a very bad situation. I mentioned how so many sports on TV at the same time has created an unprecedented amount of competition in a day and age when there's already so much more competition out there as far as media is concerned. With social media, with things like Netflix and streaming, gone are the days of 50, 60 years ago when there were only like 3 or 4 channels on the dial and everyone was basically watching the same thing. That does not happen anymore. Other than like the Super Bowl and like presidential debates and, you know, a few major events here and there are very few things on TV that bring in those kind of massive numbers. So when NASCAR is able to get 3 million viewers for a NASCAR race, that's not bad. That's certainly not bad. But again, looking back at that chart, the fact that NASCAR has seen minimal decline in viewership this year compared to last year at least gives it a slight nod over some of these other sports, as you can see. Now, I think NASCAR's numbers are somewhat inflated by the fact that they were the first, or at least one of the first major sports to be back on TV. And even during the pandemic with the iRacing races, they were kind of on TV pretty much every week anyways. There wasn't a whole lot of a gap there. So like I said, that first Darlington race back got over 6 million viewers. That's really high for a Darlington race in recent years. I think some of those early on races definitely boosted the numbers a little bit. Sure, the midweek races drug it down a little bit. Some of the more recent races like the Charlotte Roval this last weekend got like about 100,000, a couple 100,000 viewers less than last year's race did. So a slight decrease. I do think some of these more recent races have drugged that number down a little bit, but the fact that NASCAR is still more or less breaking even, meanwhile the NBA Finals is seeing 50% decreases in the TV ratings, and they had the Lakers. LeBron and the Lakers were in the finals this year. I'm surprised it did that poorly. At least you can say about NASCAR they have limited the damage more or less. Now, of course, there are plenty of differences between NASCAR and other sports beyond just, you know, when they've been run. I think NASCAR being first to the market was important, and the fact that all these other sports have been kind of swallowed up by each other over the last few weeks and months, I do think that matters. I think obviously the nature of each sport is also important. I think in general, just people in this country, there's a lot more out there to be thinking about, to be watching, to be concerned about, of course, with the pandemic. I just think in general, sports have kind of been a little more of an afterthought this year than in normal years. So that likely contributes to the fact that so many sports have seen declining ratings. But I will say this is at least some good news for NASCAR as far as how they've been able to withstand the difficulties this season. So give Fox and NBC some credit in that department for sure. That's really all I wanted to talk about in this episode. We covered Larson, we covered TV ratings. I briefly mentioned that Eric Jones to the 43. We'll monitor that. I'd love to see Eric Jones stay in a somewhat decent Cup car. Obviously, that's a pretty big decline from the 20 car, but at this point with what's available, I think Eric Jones is just take what he can get to stay in the Cup Series at this point. So we'll talk more about that later if it comes to fruition, but that's all I've got for this episode. Thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you are new to the channel. We talk NASCAR almost every single day on this show. And of course, a big thank you to my fantastic Patreon supporters. I couldn't do this show without your tremendous support each and every month. If you also want to support the channel, check out that top link down in the description. Going to be a busy weekend at Kansas. First race of the 3rd round of the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. Also new round for Xfinity and trucks as well. So going to be a busy weekend of racing action. Can't wait to watch. Hope you guys enjoy. I will see you again Sunday night after the Kansas Cup race.